So you went from uncool to cool?
Not inside, of course. I loved skin. I loved the concept of kind of making people look and feel better whilst also tackling key issues. And then I left to set up my own practice, which was quite an unusual thing to do at the time. I think people thought I was bonkers. I didn't do things according to the usual paradigm.
Live TV, though, is really stressful.
So stressful. So it was all very, you need to cut your hair or you're off the show, Samantha. I think I might have weeped a little.
Oh my gosh.
I think they just had this image of a doctor lady with her curly bob. I mean, my parents were told by somebody in the town that what business do they have sending their daughter to Cambridge? Having hope around better skin for a lot of people is a terrifying notion. And what if their hopes get dashed again? And that is the way all the skincare stuff I've gone on to do began, really.
My guest today is Dr. Sam Bunting, a cosmetic dermatologist, founder of Dr. Sam Bunting and Associates on Harley Street, and her eponymous skincare brand, Dr. Sam's. Her clinic and skincare line is known to be the go-to for those in the know, and her passion for demystifying, simplifying, and making skincare solutions accessible is what led her to become a trusted voice on TV shows, including TLC's Extreme Beauty Disasters, and in print in beauty columns and features in every major newspaper and magazine title you can think of. She was born in County Down, Belfast, and studied at Cambridge University and University College London before becoming a member of the Royal College of Physicians in 2002. She practiced medical dermatology for 9 years before establishing her own private practice on Harley Street. She says that the aim, and her speciality, is bridging the gap between medical dermatology and beauty. It's obviously something she's doing very well because she has over 200,000 subscribers to her YouTube channel and nearly 150,000 followers on Instagram, where she shares skincare advice and product recommendations. While skin issues may present as an external, dare I say, superficial problem, what Sam brings to the conversation is her emotional intelligence, keenly aware that what might be appearing on the skin can be affecting the mind, body, and spirit too. It's why I'm so excited to have this conversation with Sam today. Dr. Sam Bunting, it is such a pleasure to welcome you back onto The Emma Gunn Show.
Delighted to be here. Wow, what an intro.
This is your return.
Yes, I've been waiting for the invitation impatiently.
Patiently waiting in the wings, WhatsApping me. I do think that is the thing that you bring, which is so unique, and you have a real brand of it, of having that emotional intelligence of skin problems. Yes, it's a how you look issue, but it's so much more than that. You really understand that it's a how you feel problem too. You really suffered with acne, didn't you?
God, it was a nightmare, honestly. I mean, I can remember putting concealer on, getting up to go down to see patients on call in the middle of the night. So I really kind of know the journey of that person who struggled with how they're perceived all the time, in work and their personal life. And I think that really fueled my personal interest in helping people with breakout-prone skin achieve a more accessible solution. But it also comes from a love of beauty. I mean, I was obsessed with, making things look better and taking dermatology further than at the time was currently being practiced with sort of more of the New York derm model, which basically looked at both the sort of medical and the cosmetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more holistic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's what people want. They get better in their skin problem and then they want to see how much better they can look. It's about confidence and the way you look being inextricably intertwined.
So your journey has been really interesting, and it's a journey I don't understand because I don't understand how medicine works. I don't understand what you have to do. I just always say that my friends in beauty who do what you do, I just know that they've spent a long time in school.
Yes.
Because it takes a lot of work to be able to do what you're doing now, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, 6 years at medical school, 3 years at Cambridge, 3 years at UCL, then training, and you go through those tough years where you do a bit of everything. Then you decide if you're going to be a physician or a surgeon or a psychiatrist or a GP. So I went down the physician's routes. And, I loved skin. I'd spent a year in Australia when I was a junior doctor, and I loved the concept of kind of making people look and feel better whilst also tackling key issues. And, fell into dermatology, really loved it, but also saw that it might be a bit limited staying in the hospital setting. So I practiced in my training program for 6 years and as a locum consultant for 3 years. And then I left to set up my own practice, which was quite an unusual thing to do at the time. I think people thought I was bonkers. I didn't do things according to the usual paradigm.
Well, my intro question with my guests is normally, what's your relationship like with risk? And talk to me about the biggest risk you've ever taken. And that was your big risk, because that was an untrodden path, wasn't it? To make that change when you made it.
Yeah, very early. And, colleagues were a little bit, what are you doing? Or, you work really hard to get into a dermatology training program. But I just kind of knew that I wanted to have a role in education. I wanted to be able to say what I thought about, straightforward stuff like skincare, to have an opinion on that. And you're a bit restricted when you work in a hospital setting. So I made the move, left, started doing a bit of brand work at the same time, and really got to love doing that. Really loved being immersed in the beauty industry. Made friends with a few journalists along the way, and then became, somebody they found accessible and nice to go and see about their personal problems. So built relationships at the same time, loved doing the beauty work, and then ended up doing a bit of TV. So all of a sudden, taking the sort of less trodden path opened up tremendous opportunities that just otherwise wouldn't ever have appeared. And even though it kept leading to things that scared the life out of me, I kept going and kept finding new challenges, rising to them despite, a degree of anxiety, and loving it anyway. So, life just kept getting more and more interesting. So I'm very lucky. I took a turn. It was a bit, kind of scary at the time, but I haven't looked back with any regret for a second. So
it's interesting you talk about regret, because I think someone asked a while ago on the podcast, like, what sits on the other side of risk? And I don't necessarily know what sits on the other side of risk, but I know that what sits on the side of not taking the risk is almost certainly going to be a regret of some sort.
I mean, it's interesting. I don't have many regrets in my life. I just don't tend to look back on events that way. And I think that's really quite helpful to me. I don't sort of pore endlessly over things that I haven't done. Probably because in the main, the things that really appeal to me on a very kind of deep level, even when I haven't felt that I've necessarily got the skills to do so, I've gone for it and decided that, despite my own perhaps tendency to underestimate myself a bit, which is a bit of a theme in terms of what goes on inside my head, I've generally done the things and worked it out as I've gone along. And that's definitely led to a growth in self-confidence. I was quite a shy person going to Cambridge from Northern Ireland. Even that was a bit of a risk. My parents, who neither of whom went to university, but are just, bloody amazing individuals, were told by somebody in the town that, what business do they have sending their daughter to Cambridge? What would they know about such a thing, and how would they help me?
Really?
Yeah. The pharmacist, his son going to Cambridge made sense. That's, small towns' opinions sometimes kind of. But, my parents said, that doesn't matter. That's, Sam's earned the opportunity and she'll get it. And my mum was really passionate about that. Her sister had gone to university and perhaps hadn't had the support to get into Oxford. She was told she was bright enough to go there. And my mum wanted to make sure no matter what, my brother and I would have whatever opportunities we could create for ourselves. So we didn't have a huge amount of money, but they found a way. My mum contributed a lot of her inheritance money to ensure I got to Cambridge, and she's very proud, but I wouldn't have been there without her sort of strength of her belief in me. So
what did it mean to you because I'm sure a lot of people listening have an idea about what Cambridge is like, but it might not have ever been on the table. I definitely have. I can remember being 17 and being in the sixth form and like the girls who were doing the Cambridge entry or the Oxbridge exams and just thinking, wow, that's terribly exciting. And you knew that on the other side of that, there was this incredible campus and all these wonderful people went there and it was these really historic buildings. But what was the reality of going to Cambridge like?
Very daunting. Even going for the interviews, I remember not feeling terribly well equipped. I was lucky in that I was always very competitive. So even in situations where I wasn't perhaps as well trained, I don't know, there are schools now where you're literally trained for Oxbridge application from quite a young age. That definitely isn't the culture in Northern Ireland. I've always liked doing the very best that's possible. It's elitism. I don't know what it is, I don't know where it comes from, but I've been like that since I was very little. And I suppose my cousin had gone to Cambridge. He was very bright, but he was musical. He wasn't, he was very academic. For me, being good at sport, I think part of it at the back of my mind was this will help me later on in life, but also, I like doing well at sport. I wanted to make my coach proud, wanted to make my dad proud. He was really into sport. And, those things I think to some extent I did for other people, but I also did them because I knew that they would stand me in good stead at a later point in time. And I think it was that combination of being academic, I was good at science, and then being really driven, which I think is kind of a core quality that has stood me in good stead all the way through the various sort of episodes of life recently. That was there, and that is what drove me, I think, to get into Cambridge. In Cambridge, it was tough. I mean, my goodness, medicine was hardcore. There was 9 to 5 lectures every day. Medicine?
Oh, medicine. Sorry, they said Madison. She sounds like an American upstart. Why is she giving you a hard time? Okay, medicine, right. This is why I didn't get into Cambridge and you did.
Stop it. My enunciation clearly failing me today. So, medicine at Cambridge is hardcore. So you do, 9 to 5 every day. And then you had evening tutorials. We had to write essays. And like an idiot, I'd chosen to row in my first term. Again, this sporty competitive thing. So I was up at every other morning at like 5 a.m. to be on the river, freeze to death, and then get back in time for lectures.
Wow.
And then I think it was like there was actually lectures on a Saturday as well at some point. So yeah, they cram a lot into 8-week terms, and then you're supposed to be really social and outgoing at the same time. So everyone was quite depressed by week 5.
Sounds fab.
5th week blues were a thing. But yeah, it was a privilege. And you meet, as you say, fascinating people, make great connections. And it's an amazing city to study in. So
how do you view that? Do you see that as a risk to going to Cambridge or more of an opportunity?
No, I mean, that was definitely an opportunity. No, I didn't think there was any risk involved with that at all. But it wasn't the easiest of environments to navigate coming from, Northern Ireland. I think being so busy, I was really shy, like quite painfully shy, I would say, in those days. Which you might find hard to believe.
No, I understand it because we do know each other. But I also know that shyness, I think as you get older, transforms into the emotional intelligence that I mentioned right at the top of the show, or a vulnerability. Because perhaps you've been more of an observer and you're more keenly aware of your own feelings and perhaps of others, which I think is probably what your shyness is. Perhaps was it overstimulating, perhaps?
No, I think it was a bit of not being good enough at the beginning. I didn't feel smart enough. Like I had a tutorial partner who was uber gifted. I think she'd applied for the first time when she was 15. And, I hadn't done biology. So I'd done maths and advanced maths, which is really not very useful whenever you're doing medicine, and chemistry and physics. So actually I had an awful lot to learn. And such was the average intellect that they didn't really bother with the basics too much. Right. The lectures were all very much more the areas of interest of the lecturers. So you actually had an awful lot to do yourself if you didn't have that basic biological background. So the pace of it was like nothing else. And it's not like history or English where you could be incredibly gifted. There was a sheer volume factor you had to work your way through. Anyway, I mean, it's not to complain. I obviously did all right in the end, but it was a very, very steep learning curve at the time when you're also trying to be all these other things, sporty, sociable, meet a boyfriend, whatever it was. So it was just that thing of having really high expectations of yourself and then being around other people for the first time who were potentially way brighter than you. That was an unusual situation to be placed in.
That's massively intimidating.
It's a lot, yeah.
Sounds intense. But bringing it back to risk, I'm curious about this person who went into Cambridge, where it was a really steep learning curve, and it was perhaps a big shift from what you had known. Adapting to that environment, then coming out of it, doing nearly 10 years, and then making a decision that perhaps just seemed like a bit mad. But like, why are you doing this? But there is this part, you've sort of alluded to it, this idea of this confidence, of this gut feeling that steers you, as well as your intelligence and as well as things like your education. So was it a gut instinct that made you pursue that risk? to, so you left medicine, not left medicine. What is that change that you made?
So the majority of people, when they specialize, they stay in the hospital system. That's often the source of their referrals when they set up private practice eventually. So there's a natural thing is to do 1 or 2 years where you focus solely on NHS practice as a consultant dermatologist, and then you might think about starting to see patients privately. It wasn't that I wanted to be in private practice per se. I think I just saw that the model didn't suit me. I didn't want to be a doctor sitting in hospital. And that's not because I didn't want to sort people out and tend to disease. It was just, it wasn't quality, and it didn't, to me, deliver. It was about seeing lots and lots and lots of patients. My locum consultant job at the Whittington, I would see 28 patients in a morning, which is just, it's just a really kind
What's
of
that
hard
7-minute sessions?
I don't know. I hope most of the time I didn't have to do more than write a prescription, just because it was really tough. But, to deliver a quality service where you and the patient really get something out of it does take time to do it really well, especially with skin, especially with acne-prone skin, which, I was kind of fascinated with because of my own personal experience and thought that I could bring a lot more to the table. So yeah, it was a decision based on what I didn't want to do more than what I necessarily did. But the irony is that sort of turn in the path has led me to sort of my dream career. And I couldn't have designed it any better. It's kind of what I wanted to do when I was, flicking through the pages of Vogue when I was younger. I know that sounds a bit sort of superficial or naive, but at the end of the day, I've kind of ended up in exactly that position. So the subconscious at work has been quite powerful.
Well, it seems like it. Did you have a mentor, or did you have anyone who
Not really,
could
no.
sort of say,
yeah, this is the right
stick
thing
with
to
it?
do.
Yeah.
No, I think I was lucky to make a few good connections right at the beginning. And, I worked for a couple of other people before I set up my own practice. And I think I quickly worked out what I didn't like, what other people did about the way they conducted their business. And then, it's quite easy to start. You start small. But I found that taking time and actually really listening to people and gathering lots of information and really making them feel listened to and heard was actually the secret to getting someone to feel like the appointment was a valuable use of their time. And then by really going into the bespoke detail of exactly what they needed to do with their skin, right down to the cleanser they should use or which moisturizers would suit them best and how to make sunscreen work with all of that. So doing all those little detailed things, people seem to really like that. And that is the way all the skincare stuff I've gone on to do began, really. By developing that way of practicing, which meant taking more time and being, here you go. This is the whole plan. There's no bits missing, right down to supplement advice, which makeup brands to use. That was something nobody else was doing. And it's clearly what people wanted in the way that, if you see a really good nutritionist, you have a complete plan. There's no guesswork. So that's what had kind of worked for me when it came to getting control of my own skin. And, there seemed to be an appetite for it. It was a new way of practicing. It's a bit of a luxury, I suppose. But, at the end of the day, your skin, I think, has the biggest power of anything about your appearance to make you feel good. Hair too, of course, but I think skin is so powerful. When your skin looks great, you feel on top of the world. So,
well, I, like you, had really bad acne as a teenager. Mine had cleared up by the time I hit uni-ish. But I remember a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago now, I had I was changing medicines and I had the old acne appeared again. And it was so bizarre, having had over 10 years, I guess, maybe even 15 years of my skin being okay after really bad skin in my teens, to then navigate my life with acne, because I would do this. And for people who can't see, I would bring my shoulders up and try and cover my face with my hair.
Yep.
And you realize that's what I mean about the emotional intelligence. It isn't just about, oh, you've got cystic acne, so try this particular topical cream and maybe try the. It's like, okay, how do we actually get to you? Because there are quite a lot of defenses up. And I think that's what you're really good at doing. And you mentioned there about listening to what people wanted and giving them the space to be heard. I wonder whether that's something you do to other people, because actually it's something you appreciate in people doing for you.
Yes. I mean, I think that's probably right. I think it also, you know, when it comes to things that make you feel vulnerable, like you touched on earlier, it can take time to win rapport with someone. And there is nothing worse than feeling, you know, vulnerable, maybe having to take your makeup off in front of a stranger for the first time and feeling like you've got 10-minute window to get all that done and have somebody reach a conclusion. And, you know, I've been there where I've had to rush people through and it just doesn't feel good. And even if you've given them the right solution, they can walk away just feeling like that hasn't gone well. So, you know, there's maybe a bit of me that's the people pleaser that wants to literally make other people happy. It is a great feeling when you know you've made a difference. Then you see them again in 3 months. And even though you've maybe not prescribed anything that's that different to what they've had before, how you've delivered it, made it actionable and made them stick with it. And that is the thing. What happens in those sort of, you know, 11 weeks between the 2 appointments? Have you convinced that person enough to do what is quite scary? Because having hope around better skin for a lot of people is a terrifying notion. And what if their hopes get dashed again? So I feel like that's the work, that the psychological work is almost more important than, you know, what I see. Like oftentimes the skin between 2 or 3 people, you know, much the same issue and the solutions are much the same, but, you know, what do they need to hear for a different action to happen this time as a result of the appointment? So that's, I guess, the coaching part of it.
You are hugely successful and you are a big name on the beauty scene. And I love the fact that you're bristling as if you're uncomfortable, but you've earned that and I will not hear you say otherwise. And so I was curious about the excuses that you make for yourself or for others. And I think excuses are the things we put between us and what we want sometimes to sort of give ourselves a bit of a comfort buffer. And I was really surprised that you talked about the fact that you have a voice inside that tells you you're not good enough.
Well, sometimes it's not that explicit. It's just that harsh self-criticism. You know, it's hard to know where that comes from. I suppose it's all, you know, fear-based stuff. My relationship with success and what that means and what that does for others around me, there's something in that as well. I've probably learned that being successful makes other people happy and gives them a good feeling sometimes. So I suppose the fear of disappointing people by not delivering. You know, thankfully I haven't had many instances like that. You know, my driving test being probably the main case in point for failure. Oh, I just haven't got one.
How many times have you taken your test?
3.
That's okay.
I mean, I've not tried for quite some time.
Do you need to drive, Sam? Would you like to drive?
I think for freedom when I travel, yes. Like, yeah, that would be quite good. Or maybe to go to the countryside and just escape London. You know, it's that thing of escaping city dwelling. But yeah. So I think a little bit of it comes from, you know, letting people down maybe. That sort of is mixed up in there as well. But yeah, I think underestimating myself hasn't necessarily impacted what I do. So, you know, I think I feel the anxiety and the worry about the fallout and not doing things right, but I still tend to go ahead with things. So, which, you know, has, I think over the years helped lessen that feeling a bit. But when you have a bad day or something doesn't go to plan or you get overly emotional about something, there's often a root cause in there that's based around something simple like that. And maybe there's a bit about looks as well. I think the industry I work in, I probably haven't ended up in that by accident. And then there's that thing that women can sometimes do where they compare themselves relentlessly to others. So there's a bit of that in there as well, probably. And I think, I don't know why, but maybe just being in the media kind of can, again, exacerbate that feeling sometimes. So yeah, that's a bit wishy-washy maybe, but, you know, there's a thread, I think.
I can really relate to it because I think that I will probably should admit this, but I will probably enter a lot of situations. And even though the person that people see walking into a room is a 45-year-old woman who's got 20 years experience in this industry, has been doing this for however many years, but I still feel like I'm walking into school in my school uniform as a 15-year-old who is starting from scratch. And I think I have to work on that because that's the energy I bring. And I don't want to bring that energy. I want to bring the energy of, oh, I know what I'm doing. Because I do in a lot of cases. But I think that's how it shows up for me sometimes, is that I have a very similar thing of like, you're not good enough, but it shows up as almost as if the experience that you has is worth nothing. So my brain is going to tell me that you're back in your school uniform and you're trying to play with the big girls and you're not ready yet.
Yes. That sounds very, familiar. And I've definitely seen you walk into rooms and do not exude anything of the gauche 15-year-old. But I don't know why it's so easy to diminish what you've done and what you've achieved. And if you probably wrote it out on a piece of paper and used that different part of your brain to process the information, it's quite clear the evidence is against the voice.
Yeah.
And yet the voice can often win.
Well, when you said that the way that the voice wins is that it will put a distance between you and the thing that you have to act on. And so maybe that voice makes you bury your head in the sand a little bit. Would you say?
Can definitely be massively avoidant. I mean, I think I don't tend to let myself down when it really counts, but I can definitely, avoid and procrastinate, sort of an Olympic standard sometimes. When I don't have a critical deadline to adhere to. But, that's a good example of beating myself up about something that's innately human.
Yeah.
So, you can get a bit meta about it. But I think, we did the meditation course together last year. It's definitely helped. I now have much better tools to interrupt the loop. A cold shower is great.
Mm-hmm.
Sex is great. Meditation is obviously something that's a bit more accessible to have in your toolkit.
For anyone who's not sure, so actually last year, at the beginning of last year, I did a meditation course. I did it with Gillian Lavender at the London School of Meditation. And I mentioned in passing, I think it was like halfway through December, I'm doing this meditation
throwaway
course.
comment.
It was such a throwaway comment. And then the next thing I know, Sam's like, I'm on that course with you.
Stalking you. Yes. Well, it was very close to where I lived. So.
Yeah, it was around the corner. But it was actually very nice because I think that's where we really understood that we both were exploring meditation in order to help with issues we both have that there's symmetry in, and that low self-esteem is probably one of them, and the other one is coping with life in real time in a way that is not knee-jerk, because I really needed meditation, because if I have a knee-jerk reaction, then I am a jerk. It's as simple as that. So if I respond to an email immediately, I will be jerky because my brain hasn't processed it, and I'm being a jerk. And so meditation has been really helpful. And so clearly, when you say it interrupts the loop, how has it benefited you?
So I think the first thing is when I can feel that I'm getting, towards my threshold of tolerance where I might become snappy. And, when you have a team, I have 2 teams now with the clinic and the brand, and, one side doesn't see what the other what no one really knows exactly what you're dealing with on both sides at any given time, and it just takes someone to come and ask for a simple request at a time whenever you fill up from the other side of things. So it's about learning to go and empty the frustration tank or the pent up tank, depending on the flavor of the day. And sometimes that means literally locking myself in the loo and just taking 15 minutes to meditate. Sometimes there's nowhere else to do it, but you know what? Make it work wherever you back of taxis. I've learned how to meditate quite well now. I don't know about you, but I, have to tell the taxi driver, would you mind not having your phone call or whatever? But I will take whatever time I can, particularly for that second one in the day. The first one's usually fine. It's the second one that can sometimes be the challenge. But yeah, I really do feel reset whenever I've done that, especially when you're a little bit tired and later in the day. Sometimes it's actually easier to kind of empty the tank, so to speak. And I'll do it before difficult conversations as well. I think that helps me be less reactive. I'm definitely someone who brings a lot of emotion to everything I do, and that has its upside, but it definitely has its downside.
Have you been criticised for that in the past? I'm asking this because I have.
Yes, I think so. I think people can think I'm quite hard to bring things up with and talk about problems with. And I'm probably not great when there's a critical element. I can definitely be defensive and reactive to that. I mean, of course, that's, again, human nature. But in a way that stops me getting the best out of a conversation. Like I take that quite personally if I haven't been able to listen properly and get all the information and therefore make decisions based on all the information. If you shut someone down because you go into chimp mode and that activates their chimp mode, well, no one's really getting all the information. And therefore, as a business owner, you want to make the best decisions with all the information, and you want to treat other people with kindness and respect. I think that's so important. I made a decision with the brand that I wanted to work with people that I like, that got on with, that I enjoyed going for a glass of wine with after work. It's really important to me that we hire nice people as a sort of no asshole policy. And it's really worked so far, but then you build emotional relationships, and that can cause trouble as well, post-pandemic, and perhaps people reevaluating decisions about traveling into work and making decisions to go and work in jobs where they could be remote, things like that. You end up taking quite personally because you've built those bonds as well. So, this is the roller coaster ride of a small business owner, but mostly it's good. And even with the difficult stuff, as long as you reflect on it and you find the learnings in it, you grow a bit, and hopefully you do a better job next time.
Well, you also have that wonderful disease I also have, which is overthinking and catastrophizing. So
Yes.
This is why I think we both want to do meditation
Cassandra.
as well.
It's my alter ego's name.
Wait, what? Cassandra?
Well, she always cited, I think she's a Greek goddess that cited, disaster and doom, and the worst was going to happen. And of course, we're all going to die eventually. But, my inner Cassandra can definitely come out on steroids sometimes.
Interesting. How do you pull that back?
I mean, it's kind of the same, right? I mean, in some ways, exploring all potential negative outcomes and trying to plan for them, it's kind of a Stoic philosophy almost. If you plan for the worst possible disasters, then you have a good contingency plan for just about everything. But the problem is when you keep in a loop and you can't just go, okay, well, I've got all the facts now and I've made the plan and we need to move forward anyway. It just sometimes stops you from moving forward, perhaps as speedily as you might want to. And I think, we work in a very fast-paced e-commerce world. You can't afford to dilly-dally with those kind of critical decisions.
No.
So, and sometimes when I'm out of my comfort zone, I'll overthink even more, and I'm out of my comfort zone on a daily basis. So, yeah, I guess what I've chosen to do is a bit masochistic given my personality, but hey-ho, it does make you more careful. There is an upside to it, I think. It's just at personal cost sometimes. You
talked a little while ago about you've got the brand team and you've got the clinic team. So you sit in the center. How good do you have to be at delegating? Because if you're taking on the emotional burden of both teams at the same time, that feels as though it could be a lot. And actually, one of the ways in which one could relieve that pressure would be to delegate and trust, which I think, and I know this personally, is the hardest thing to do when you are wound up to be anxious, a control freak, self-esteem issues. That it feels very uncomfortable to trust other people and delegate. But clearly, that is something that is necessary for you to do. Is that something that's been tricky to learn?
Yes. And I think, we're 12 now on the brand side of things. So the team is growing, and, I've had to make a decision to hire some sort of more senior people. So, there's very much the sort of concept of having a loose grip is something I'm trying to practice more, but it's work. And I got a really good piece of advice, though, when it comes to these things from a friend who's been many things, but a business coach was one of her many roles. But, it's about being a bit vulnerable and actually telling people, look, a bad day with me looks like this, almost like giving people the information ahead of time to, I suppose, it's like a blueprint for how best to get the best out of you. And I think if both parties can do that, whenever, our sort of work structure at the brand is very flat in terms of hierarchy. It's very level. So everybody knows how to get the best out of each other and where the red zones might lie. It's better for everyone, really. But, that is a work in progress.
What's your red zone? Red zones.
Red zones. I struggle with people who don't put their all in. I think I'm somebody that tends to commit 110%. And I can struggle if it seems like somebody else isn't, that I have the expectation that they will. Again, that's something, I'm having to become more mature about. It's my business. I can't expect everybody to have exactly the same enthusiasm for it. Yeah, I mean, it's all tied up with emotion again. And I suppose I find everything we do with the brand hugely exciting and very motivating, and, really puts a fire in my belly in a way that probably nothing else in my career has. Even on the sort of the more mundane days where it's, the work maybe isn't as exciting as it is on others, I still feel really a strong sense of purpose, and like, this is the right thing for me to be doing with my life. I know lots of people don't get that, and I feel very, very privileged. So I think when you have that much strength of belief in what you do, you can't quite understand people maybe not having the same emotion around it. But
it wasn't my own business, but when I worked on magazines, I felt so lucky to get that dream job. I felt like it was sort of like, I don't know, there was a lucky star, or it was a full moon or something. It didn't feel earned. I felt like I'd been, I don't know, it was a fairy tale in a way, because it was a dream job. And I had a terrible attitude during my time there, which I deeply regret and have worked on since, because I thought that in order to show how much I valued that opportunity, I took it very, very seriously. I was an emotional stakeholder. I didn't make good money. I didn't make any more money for however many more magazines sold or anything like that. So it was just, but I was an emotional stakeholder. And if I saw somebody, what I saw to be having fun with it, or being a bit cavalier with their role, or bunking off, I would be livid. Because I was holding, because
there's a really strong sense of fairness, isn't it? And I think fairness is something that it's quite interesting. I learned on another podcast recently that fairness is actually a chimp quality. It's not a human quality.
You've just read this chimp book. What's the chimp book?
No, I haven't read it yet, but that took my breath away, because I would say that a lot of the times where I've had conflict, it's been because fairness has been at the core of it. And actually, I don't know, to know that that's something that, being human and being, more sanguine about life and events, might make it easier for a start. But I don't know. I find that interesting.
So why did it take your breath away?
What?
The chimp thing, the fairness thing. But had you not looked at it like that before?
No, because I think of fairness as being like a very rational, and it's quite nuanced. But at the end of the day, it's about values and principles, as opposed to something we're born with this fist thumping that's not fair. Does that seem odd to you?
No, not in the slightest. It's just I wondered why it was a revelatory moment when you heard
because
it.
I can hang on to things for a long time based on things seeming unfair, and I think I'm right because of that. And actually, at the end of the day, if a relationship is affected by being right as opposed to being, what's the word, working collaboratively to a better outcome for both of you, which is a much more human thing to do when you compare the two. But I think, fairness to me seemed like it was a human and rational thing to do, as opposed to...
Yeah, you've just described why social media is so wrong, and all interactions on social media are so wrong, because there is no nuance, there's no collaborative. It's just, this is my opinion. People are so entrenched.
Yes.
And I think actually when you do feel as though you have right on your side...
Yes.
And fairness, I think, makes you think that you're being responsible and honest and honourable. You can feel as though you're justified because you're right. You're on the right side of history. But actually, you might be being a bit of a dick.
And making yourself and the other person unhappy. I'd say this definitely has happened in relationships. Yeah.
No, I'm no judgment. I'm right. I am right there with you, sister. And I do think you talked about being quite prone to anxiety, but enjoying risk. And I have to say I occupy the same sort of brain space in that I am fundamentally risk averse and a bit of a scaredy cat, but I want to do it. And I wish I could be, I couldn't do a bungee jump, for example. But no. I think when I look at my career, for example, there are things that if you took my nature at face value, it shouldn't have gone the way that it did. Somewhere along the way, there's this more, there's a braver version of me that takes over and takes the leap when it doesn't make good sense to. And I think you're probably...
To your scaredy cat self, it doesn't make good sense.
It doesn't make good sense at all. I would tell somebody else to do it, but I wouldn't do it. Because I'd be like, no harm will come from it, but I would talk myself out of it. I'm very, very good at talking myself out of things for fear of what might happen.
And yet you haven't, though, in the majority of the instances that really counted by the sound of things.
Not the majority, maybe, but enough for me to have the data to prove that I shouldn't be as scared as I instinctively am, perhaps.
Okay. No, I mean, I can definitely relate to that a lot. I think for me, it feels a bit like there's a chip that gets activated when things are exciting enough, and how crazy can things gets kind of starts to buzz around. And then I think my dopamine systems kick in, and then I get really, yes, close my eyes, hope for the best, and then for smart, intelligent people, we tend to work things out. So I would say TV was definitely an example of that. Like for an inherently quite shy person who doesn't like public speaking, to end up doing a TV show is quite brave, I think.
Was it a case of someone said, would you like to do it? Was it a case of this is a yes or no question?
I mean, I hadn't put myself, I wasn't looking for anything, no. So it happened, I think, after a couple of bits of press. I think I'd been in the Daily Mail or something with a big picture.
Well, you made it.
And making controversial comments around a well-known moisturiser. I won't be more specific than that.
That annual feature. Right.
And then, that was fine, went up for the interviews and I think got it. It was quite a traumatic period around needing to have my hair chopped.
Right.
So it was all very, you need to cut your hair or you're off the show, Samantha. And I was frog marched to the hairdressers to cut my hair. And I think I might have weeped a little.
Oh my gosh. I thought it was like America's Next Top Model.
It was shades of that. Literally, the director of the show...
Get over it, Samantha.
I pushed back, said, I don't think I want to do that. I'm a grown-up woman. I'm not some 22-year-old that you're moulding to be the next Holly Willoughby or something. But no, they came back saying, no, it's a deal breaker for the...
Were there just too many long-haired people on the show?
No, I think they just had this image of a doctor lady with her curly bob. And anyway, so I caved and I went and had my bob made. I think I looked really crap for the first series. And they were really careful to keep me away from the playback so that I didn't get too self-conscious, they said, on camera. But I think secretly they also knew that maybe they'd made a mistake with the hair.
Right.
But anyway, the point was I learned how to talk to a camera and, to the point where I was able to do live telly with a hangover with 2 hours notice on Boxing Day Eve one year. My parents had just gone home.
Boxing Day Eve is Christmas Day.
Boxing Day Eve, as in the evening of. I imagine
I
said
see.
Eve, the Eve. I don't know. My parents had left to just go back to Ireland at 3:00, and we'd all had, a very fun night the night before. And the phone call came in at about 4:00. Can you come on Channel 4 News? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Oh, today? Okay. I was in Ugg boots and had a green complexion from, lack of skincare, I think. And somehow rallied and got myself together and then went on and did the live segment. And my parents were just literally arriving home, going, we got a message to say you were on Channel 4 News. And I was like, yes, I've been quite busy since you left. That was quite funny.
Live TV, though, is really stressful.
So stressful.
But and actually, nothing makes live TV more stressful than being hungover.
Yeah, but then, if you can do that and then you come off it and you get that little weird high that you get when you've done something that scares the life out of you, but you haven't died. It's like, okay, what's next?
Is that you ramping up something that's already stressful to extra stress so that you can kind of almost wear it as a medal? If you can do it under those circumstances, then you can do it anytime.
I think it's the same nervous system activation with a different name, right? I mean, fear and excitement are the same thing. It's just how you brand it in your head. So I think there's that thing where if you've done something often enough, so if eventually if you do public speaking often enough or speak to a camera often enough, you stop being anxious about it. So finally, when you're in situ and you're doing the thing, it then becomes a bit more automatic and then you get a high out of it. And then I think that sort of encourages you to volunteer the next time.
It's making me think about my time in front of the camera on live TV and just thinking that actually I didn't do that, but what I would do is I would just fuel up on coffee and not eat.
So you're getting the high externally
So
then, in a way.
So it's putting more pressure on a situation that I know is already, like, I don't know about you, but the first time I did live television, I could not hear because my heart, my pulse in my ears was so loud. Like I even got it, I even get it if I'm nervous, like if I'm waiting at the doctor's or something, like I will just get
Really?
yeah, almost like deafens me. And I know that the coffee, the not eating,
Make it worse.
they're not sleeping, will absolutely won't help with that. The best thing to do would be to have like a protein-rich breakfast
There you
beforehand.
go.
Like to, I don't know, take some, some ashwagandha or some adaptogens or something, and go into that in the best possible state. But actually, you just made me realize that the state I chose to do a really stressful thing
really
was a state of
activated.
stress.
Yeah. That's interesting. But I think it is just bringing on the sensation and then redefining it. And then it's a bit exhilarating, right? I mean, I think my first time of live TV was on This Morning. And actually, I was on with two other...
For anyone who's not aware, This Morning is the most watched primetime daily TV magazine show.
Yeah, good to get your feet wet doing something really low risk. And I was on with two other contributors, and we were talking about the fact that one of the contributors had lots of work done and she looked amazing, and the other one was avidly against having work done generally. And I was there then to provide the kind of the balanced medical view on this. It wasn't a patient of mine, but they both got going to such an extent that I sat there thinking, I am not going to say a word. This is going to be my first time on live television. And I look quite nice, but I was in risk of actually saying nothing. So eventually then, I think it was Philip then said to me, so Dr. Sam, what's the risks? And my voice came out quite squeaky and quite quiet because the nerves and the, but a few words in, I kind of got going, and then I managed to keep my balance and not speed up too much, because normally I would speak quite quickly in such circumstances. But I did only really get like one little nugget in.
That's really common, and you're making me think, if it makes you feel any better, I was once on Big Brother's Little Brother, or Big Brother's Little Brother's bit on the side.
This is like peeling the onion here.
Yeah. And I was on a panel with Dean Piper, the showbiz journalist.
Yes.
I've only just remembered that he was there, and Emma Willis.
Okay, yeah.
Now they know each other. Oh. So during the dress rehearsal, we chat, and I stand there like
just buddy in the headlights a tiny bit, yes.
And just before we went live, the producer came over to me and said, "They know each other. If you don't speak up, you're not going to say anything, and you're going to like an idiot."
Not to make an already slightly stressful situation.
So then I started butting in, and it felt really rude because like they are friends and they've got this normal rapport. But I'm sure live TV it's not just about live TV. It could be about doing a presentation at work, or it could be about anything where you're under high stress. It's about showing up and having the energy to give your best version of yourself.
Yes. You also have a deeper voice than me. I mean, I really need to work on my voice with gravity. Because otherwise, on TV, you do actually you need to own your expertise. And voice is so important in that.
But I think anywhere. I think it's a skill.
No, sure.
Anywhere, whether you're speaking publicly or to a small group of people. I think there is a real magic in seeing somebody who can really hold a room. That's why, like, if you watch someone like Obama speak, you're like, doesn't matter where he is, people are going to pay attention. I asked you to tell me about your greatest success, and you are really proud of your brand. So I want to ask you about that because, first of all, starting a brand in an already really busy beauty marketplace, that to me, I was surprised that wasn't your biggest risk. Having a brand, Dr. Sam's, that provides skincare solutions. You've just launched Retinol Pro Nightly. Was that something that you had to go back and forth on about whether that was the right thing to do? Yes, I know I've got a voice in this industry, but is this industry ready for my products?
I mean, I think I said to you my biggest regret was not doing it earlier. And I think the whole journey to doing it and actually taking action was, the brand's been around for 4 and a bit years now. And I suppose I started working on it concretely a year before that, so 5.5 years for that. But before that, I'd been talking to other entities about doing a brand for probably an additional 4 or 5 years. And it started with Boots, actually. I was approached by 2 consultants who'd worked previously with Boots at a very senior level. They thought I'd be a great figurehead for a brand. Had I any ideas? And actually, I had lots of ideas. And in fact, the ideas are really not that dissimilar to what I ended up going on to do with Dr. Sam's. But we spent, I'd say, the best part of a year in conversation with them. And, it's a huge organization. Reminds me a bit of the NHS, actually. And, you build relationships with people and then they move and you're building new relationships and you have to convince lots of stakeholders as to why a brand, with your name on it would be a good idea. And I probably just didn't have quite enough clout then to really drive it home. It's obviously a blessing because I wouldn't have had anything like the control I've had. But I think it started the seeds of doing it, but it also made me think I needed something else, somebody else, some other supportive element because I didn't have a business background. And I guess I went around the houses a bit. I talked to other people because there was interest. I was then approached by a high net worth individual who had developed brands before about doing it. But they didn't like the idea of doing an e-commerce brand, which to me was the way to deliver something really special, but that was affordable, because I really had this notion of wanting the brand to be the diffusion line to the clinic. So the clinic is sort of my high-end offering. It's bespoke. It's, face-to-face. It's luxurious in terms of the time and the support that people get. But I wanted the brand to be the next best thing and to use technology to create an almost similar experience in terms of our routine finder, helping you find the right way to use the system. There's clear parallels in how I practice and how the brand is built, and patients can see both. It feels familiar when they do the routine finder and get their little plan at the end of it. So, the video content helps you make sure you use the products in exactly the right way, so there's no guesswork. So it's all very complete. But that wasn't what he knew. So in the end, it didn't go ahead. My partner at the time was an entrepreneur and was just like, you need to just start. And I was like, but can you really just start? So I then thought, okay, fine, I'll go and meet some independent chemists. I'll try and understand a bit more about what this would look like doing it by myself. And I suppose at the end of the day, even though I had a range of products in mind, I thought, if I did nothing else but make a cleanser, because cleansers I like kept disappearing from the market, I would be doing the world a service, myself and many beauty editors included. So at the end of the day, I finally met the chemist and manufacturer who was just the perfect partner in terms of the vision and how they saw everything coming together, and actually just really believing me at a critical point. And they made the process of developing those first products so easy, and I didn't have to invest. They were happy to commit the R&D just with the promise of the first purchase order. And that's a very unusual circumstance to be in. So it meant my risk was actually incredibly low. Of course, there's the risk to my name and putting myself out there, but I don't think I really worried about that at all. I just thought, I know products so well. I've worked with so many brands, done so much testing and, beauty awards. Pharmacology was part of my degree at Cambridge. I've always been fascinated by the chemistry and formulations and got really excited about making products. So, of course there was things like branding and building the site and all that stuff to do. But I don't know. I think once I found the right chemist and they produced formulas really quite quickly that were close to what I was looking to create, I then just got caught up in the process and didn't worry about things too much.
For anyone who wasn't sure, you just mentioned R&D, that's research and development. If you had to boil down what you've learned from that experience for someone who's listening, who may not be, so there may not be a parallel, they may not be wanting to launch their own beauty brand, but they may be listening to this thinking, I really identify with Sam about the little voice in her head and all of this, but I also want to launch a product or do a thing or make a decision. How would you boil down the sort of fundamentals of what you learned into advice that you would share with someone that you think would steer them well?
So the first thing is you must have product market fit. To me, there was no point in creating something that was already out there. It had to be different. It had to be really, really in tune with what the customer need was. That's the first thing. so, forget marketing as kind of a concept to begin with. And I think that's where so many brands go wrong. You need to really understand the consumer need and how you're going to address it in a way that is better than other competitor brands. That's the first thing. The next thing is to do everything as leanly as you can until you've tested your hypothesis. So just bootstrap it to the absolute utmost so that you're not compromising yourself, that you're not putting yourself in danger. That's probably where my risk-averse thing came in at the beginning. I was very, very careful. I mean, everything operated from the living room until it didn't. And then surround yourself with smart people who've walked that path before. So other entrepreneurs, so generous on the journey of giving advice, guidance, picking up the phone to relative strangers and connecting you with people. It gives me goosebumps just thinking back to how many nice, supportive, kind people who kind of paid it forward without any expectation at all. And I'm very lucky I was able to tap into those networks, I suppose. But I think those three things, if you do those three things, it will put you in a position of strength, I guess.
How important have mentors been, and how did you find yours?
I mean, a lot of it was kind of serendipity. I think being out there and meeting people is actually a really important part of the job. And some days, when I'm bogged down in the day-to-day of stuff, and I don't really feel like going out for a drink with somebody who maybe is thinking
Emma from such and such.
or like investors that are interested in your brand, who maybe have connections and they've seen it all before, right? And you just have to make yourself go. And invariably, it's that step back that allows you to look down on your business rather than being in the weeds of it. But I think it's actually really, really important. So for me, I mean, I joined an entrepreneurs group a couple of years ago. It was called the Supper Club. It's now called Helm. So that's been super helpful. And then I suppose because in beauty, founders meet each other all the time. So I've been quite lucky at events and things to, make friends who are also in a similar boat. What else?
Do you pay it forward? Do you mentor now?
Not yet. I still haven't quite got the bandwidth, but I'm going back to my grammar school in the near future, and I'd quite like to get involved with ideally girls who are my age, who if with a bit more support, because they are bright and have the academic prowess, but just that belief in themselves, the things, the tools that I have and that you have now that we use to whether fake confidence until it actually starts to feel natural. Like, imagine if we had a class a week, devoted to developing those tools at that early age. Like how much easier could things have been? How much better in some ways could things have been? To know that the voice in your head is not the real you, and that you can, lock it in a room and get it to silence every so while. You can
get it to pipe down as you carry on with what you're doing.
Exactly.
You have said that a weakness that you consciously work on is the sense of overwhelm that you can feel. Would you say that is a daily effort, or would you say it is something that shows up at a time of stress, and that's how you know that maybe it's time to put the phone on silent and stare at the wall for a couple of hours? That's just my coping technique.
I think I have a very sensitive nervous system, right? So it can go either way. I can have days where everything's just fallen into place. I've started my day in the right way, and a couple of good things happen and I get real momentum. I kind of can literally feel it coursing through me. But at the same token, it can go in the other direction too. So it's really just, I suppose, knowing that. I mean, I don't drink caffeine anymore for that reason, because it could tip me either way. But, it makes me feel really good when I'm in a positive.
Caffeine's my drug of choice.
Really? Oh no, I'm just dangerous. I mean, decaf coffee can sometimes even be quite a dangerous thing to consume. Yeah, no, that's how sensitive to it I am. So I have to be really careful. But yeah, I think just know thyself, right? I mean, I'm definitely what I would consider a highly sensitive person based on the reading around the topic. Noises, smells, everything. Bright lights these days, as I sit here in your very brightly lit room.
Under the Death Star,
But yeah, it's just knowing yourself, isn't it? And as I say, I definitely didn't know myself very well for for many decades. In fact, I think really the last couple of years is, as I've gone on the journey with the brands and I've had to learn new skills to cope with the lifestyle. But, I've also met people along the way that I think are really true friends. Like I've made friends really quickly in the last few years because I think you know your tribe better.
I agree with you. I think that so interesting that you said that you didn't really know yourself before. Would you say that you were running on fear hormones before?
I still would tend to. My amygdala must be the size
Enlarged.
of watermelon. It's definitely not an almond.
Right.
Metaphorically speaking.
And so do you, in getting to know yourself, what do you think is the biggest piece of work that you've had to do in order to be able to say, I know myself much better than I did before? And not only that, but in knowing myself, I am happier and the people I am able to surround myself with are far more like me and are people that I want to be around.
I think I've definitely had periods in my life where I've surrounded myself with friends who've activated my I'm not good enough thing, whether it's social status or, boyfriends, like leveling up, like setting yourself really challenging goals, because that's kind of what I've got used to doing. Maybe moving in circles that might on the outside look quite shiny, but maybe in reality don't make me feel super comfortable. So I think stopping forcing myself into situations like that now and just saying no, unless it suits me and I'm in the mood for it or whatever. Those, certainly I'd say my personal relationships, it's an area where I've definitely gotten better at recognizing bad choices or choices that have not been the best for me, probably is a better way of looking at it.
What were you at school? Were you part of the cool crowd or were you a loner?
I transitioned. I was probably a bit dorky until I became sporty. And I started doing my hair like Kylie, and then I became a bit cooler.
Which era Kylie?
Oh, mousse and diffuser.
Okay.
Locomotion.
Oh, I said early Kylie.
Better than yes.
So you went from uncool to cool. Because I think that...
not inside, of course.
Yes.
But I dated the rugby captain, kind of... But the sport stopped me being dorky, from the academic side of things.
I think something happens in school, and it's why there are so many films and TV shows that are set in high schools made by people who have long left high school, because I think there's a part of all of us.
It's still there?
Yeah, emotionally, and wants to redo or right the wrongs or wish that it had been an easier time. And I think, like you, I, as an adult, thought, if I'm with the shiny people, the shiny popular people, then I will become shiny and popular and I'll be happy. And you can spend a long time trying to do that.
Yes.
And before you realise, this is a waste of my time.
It's exhausting.
And
it doesn't make you happy because you don't actually respect them for the right reasons in the first place. So I think, it's interesting that I think there's something about our brain and still in transition in our teenage years that makes us want to be part of the crowd. Yeah. It's actually important from a survival point of view as an ape that you develop those tendencies. So it's almost more the anomaly if you are the outsider, and maybe that's not the best thing for you psychologically in terms of But in terms of values, I think actually articulating what your values are and really kind of calling them out and writing them down somewhere for those days where you're struggling, I found that to be, it's such a simple thing, but it's actually quite powerful, and it really does help you make decisions that you're otherwise in turmoil about sometimes.
Writing down, forgive me for being ignorant, but what might that look like? Is it just a list of 5 values?
Yeah, like what path do you want to tread? Like, when you lose your temper over something really trivial, or you have a run in with your Uber driver who's, gone the wrong way, or
you're not outside. Something
like that, you're not where I ordered you. Stuff like that. It's just like, that's at the end of the day, that's a small example, but being decent to people, treating others the way you want to be treated yourself is such a simple maxim, but it is so important. And it's quite easy when you become busy and, semi-important to maybe think that it's okay not to behave like that. But actually that stuff doesn't sit well with me.
I remember being, I think, in school and also in workplaces, it almost seeming as though the higher up the hierarchy you got, the more allowed it was to punch down. And so it felt like, in addition to a new job title and maybe a bit more salary every month, you also earned the right to not treat the people below you well. And
not a fan of that.
No.
It's like the boyfriend with the waiter test, right? Like people who are not.
Have you ever been on a date and a boyfriend or a potential love interest has spoken to the waiter poorly, and have you then gone, bye?
Yes, I think so. But I think he'd also been incorrect with me, and I think I might have left at the first course.
Amazing.
It would have been amazing, but I'd also broken, not to be fancy, my Manolo heel on the way to the date. So I had to sort of limp out. So I wasn't as statuesquely catwalky as I walked out as I would have been had the Manolo not
Did you do
failed
the Romeo and Michelle thing where you're like, I'm sorry, I have to leave, my shoe is filling up with blood?
No, I didn't. That's quite funny.
No, you should have. I forgot that you had a shoe fascination.
Yes.
I'm surprised that wasn't your weakness.
It's not ongoing at the moment. No, I'm in a resting phase.
You're in a resting phase. While you get a shoe closet
I
built.
don't love shoes right now. I think that's the problem. My first word was shoe, so it's not just a broad fashion thing. It's a very specific shoe thing. But yeah, the shoe silhouette of the moment does not appeal.
No, I'm just in boots and flats the whole time, and I've reached that age. It's comfort over style.
Well, I will be until the right shoe comes back.
Yeah. Oh, and then you'll be.
And then I'll be back in.
Like Cinderella.
Aquasaurus.
Right, before we.
You're right. I should have mentioned that as my weakness.
Yes, as opposed to emotional overwhelm.
My mother would definitely have chosen that as my weakness. She has this fear of me kind of going to bankruptcy court with this sort of Louis Vuitton trunk with shoes trailing out of it as I have to give up my home or something. I don't know. She's very risk averse, my mum.
Yeah, it sounds it. So to close off, let's talk about, this is the most exposing question. Talk to me about a time when you were wrong and your response has been,
well,
daily.
There's so many times, but I haven't probably given you a very insightful wrong then, have I? I mean,
you've said,
it's a thing I think we didn't do very well last year as a brand. That's probably not a terribly personal wrong.
No, and I think one of the things you said was try stuff, fail fast, and move on. So it's almost as if being wrong, in your eyes, is a way to learn.
I think you have to have a learning mindset, particularly as e-commerce has gotten harder in the last 12 months. But, I have smart people around me who are filled with ideas, so that's not a problem. But I think I drove the idea of doing a sort of a pop-up event thing. Like I was really keen on it. And I think we just didn't. I think, there are times when my lack of structured business, I've got really good instincts, I would say, because we've gotten pretty far and we've only really just been hiring more senior people into the team in the last sort of 12 months or so. But, there comes a point in time where you actually do just need people who have done loads of stuff and work for other people and, have the science of their craft rather than just a sort of, agile monkey-esque kind of instinct. So yeah, but, I now know a lot more about doing eventing, which I will carry into the next event.
So hard question then. When is there a time that you've been wrong that is not related to your brand or to work?
I think hiring has had its challenges.
That's related to work and that's related to your brand.
But I think it's, I don't know, relationships with people. I mean, I think it's those instances that are challenging. And some of the most challenging ones have been in work, people I've been close to. So, yeah.
Would you advise then don't mix business and pleasure? Is that something you're slowly learning?
Possibly. It's possibly easier. It's definitely tidier. I think it's fine if it starts in business and then veers into friendship. That is definitely easier to navigate. There are clearer rules around that. But I don't think that's not something I feel I've been wrong about. I'm trying to think what the best example is. I think I probably made the worst decisions in personal relationships. I think sometimes craving excitement and taking risks has led to a bit of a kamikaze approach to my own heart in a way. So I think that being wrong in not looking far enough ahead and actually not thinking about is rather than just thinking about the immediate excitement of meeting somebody new and, what they do to your nervous system, I suppose, in a really basic way, but actually thinking about what a relationship should look like. That's taken me a long time to mature into.
Are you someone who's slightly addicted to that first flush of love?
Definitely a bit of a love addict.
So do you have you sort of get to 6 months, you're like, bored now, and it doesn't mean
6 months is quite long, Emma.
Because I think that exciting bit is terribly exciting. And as we've discussed, as someone who has a nervous system that is highly tuned, shall we say, that I can imagine would be the place where you would like
my kryptonite,
yeah,
might even say. Yeah. But, it also means lots of amazing experiences. And again, I don't even think about relationships that didn't work out or maybe ended a bit messily as things I regret. But I have been really slow to learn. So I've really taken a break, actually, the last couple of years to try to make better decisions or to understand what it would take, a relationship to look like to actually make me happy in a more wholesome way. A bit like I've been evaluating personal friendships. So I think I'm quite excited, having done the work on myself, to see how different things might look. And I kind of won't know if the work's worked until I can be happy in a different type of relationship. Yeah. So I'll keep you posted.
That's an exciting juncture on which to leave you, because you as you say, you've done the work, you've taken time out to get to know yourself. And previously, whereby, to quote you might have had a bit of a kamikaze approach to your heart, seems like that work is going to filter out into finding someone who's going to take a bit more care of it.
Let's hope so.
No,
I'm optimistic about that too, actually. Yeah.
Well, the last question is, what are you hopeful about? So are you hopeful about love in your future?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm so happy. Watch this space. You can come back and tell us about your incredible new relationship. And you can become a relationship guru next.
Oh, good God.
Dr. Sam Bunting, thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.